Hello, glad to see you on my channel. I really value it. And today I want to share with you a wonderful story. It's a dramatic story that will come as a total shock to everybody. It is a really amazing story. So enjoy watching it. What a lucky peasant girl you are, Amanda gasped. Her girlfriend, she had been helping the bride with her shopping all day today. And so they decided to save the sweetest thing for last, buying a dress. Her fiancé, Arnold, had given her a fortune for it. Her girlfriends were bursting with envy, and they sighed sadly. Even the married ones. Arnold was one of the most eligible grooms around. The town was small, and there were as many waiting lists for the son of the local factory owner as for the institutes. However, his parents did not approve of the groom's choice. Even when Arnold came home after his first day of first grade, he said, "Mom, I'm in love with Eva. I'm going to marry her." To Eva, "Son, will you look at the other girls? Eva is pretty, of course, but there are much better, much prettier ones from good families." But he stood his ground. He was as stubborn as his father, and it was useless to argue with him. What then? What now? So Diana, his mother, had to accept her son's choice. She hid her dislike for her future daughter-in-law, but not very carefully. Eva didn't care. Diana knew Eva's parents well. She had once been in love with Connor, the girl's father. He was considered one of the coolest guys in those years. He smoked and drove his father's car, but outwardly just handsome. His smile made all the girls go crazy, including Diana. But Connor chose Heidi, the daughter of a milkmaid. Diana, on the other hand, was from a family of academics and genuinely didn't understand what was in that audition, except her figure and big eyes. Heidi was beautiful as hell, but stupid as a cork. Diana couldn't stand her and was terribly jealous of her. Until she met her future husband Harry, only then she calmed down, but the feeling in her heart had not faded to the end. Diane had always been a little jealous of Heidi, and when she left her 5-year-old Eva for her father and went to Germany with her lover, Diane even wanted to divorce her husband and go to Connor, but he rejected her sympathy, saying that he would always love Heidi in spite of her actions. Connor then had a hard time. In raising Eva, he was helped by his elderly mother. He himself drank in the early years, barely contained himself so as not to go on a binge. But he knew he had to work. Connor had his own workshop on the outskirts. The business was not profitable at all. There were only 2 workers. He couldn't afford any more. That's where he worked all his life. Diana and her husband became rich. They founded a factory in the city for the production of cheap amber-style furniture. Hearing about her only son's affection for Connor and Haya's daughter, Diana grimaced. But then she thought it was all child's play. God's foolishness. But now, with Eva walking around her house with a huge belly and trying on wedding dresses somewhere in the store at her expense, she was no longer laughing. But there was nothing to be done. For one thing, Arnold assured her that the baby was his. And secondly, he said he would cut off all contact with her if she kept putting a stick in their wheels. She couldn't lose her son, so Diane had no choice but to put up with it. And so the day before her wedding, she sat drinking wine all alone in her huge house in the center of town. And outside the window nettles, the rain brought on longing and despair. Eva tried on a 3rd dress and realized that it was the only one that didn't fit her big belly. She had never been a fashionista, and trying on outfits gave her no pleasure at all. It was the 7th month. Her firstborn was about to be born. Arnold insisted that she name him Aristarchus or Marseille. But Eva liked the other name, Charlie, but she could not offer him to her future husband as an alternative. And there was a reason for that. Charlie, Eva, and Arnold were classmates. Arnold and Eva had been friends since childhood. The girl grew up cheerful, mischievous. She was insanely pretty, sophisticated, with a good figure and grades. She had a ringing bay and a laugh. She had dark, smooth skin and blonde hair that pushed it back. She got her mother's eyes, but the rest of her features were her father's. Arnold had followed her since first grade, taking her home. He held her briefcase by the hand. Eva considered him a friend, nothing more, and she shared all sorts of secrets with him. And Arnold waited for a moment to say he was in love, but he didn't dare. Their friendship lasted until 9th grade. In the first quarter, a new boy came into the class, and his name was Charlie. He had blonde hair, green eyes, tall, charming smile, and a long nose, which, however, did not spoil him in the least. Charlie had a small family, just him and his mother. The boy was very sociable, lively. He instantly made friends and was liked by all the girls without exception. Eva had her eye on him too, but she didn't show it. She teased him, joked and smiled, and went home after school with Arnold, who was more quiet. When Charlie had a crush on Eva, which happened very quickly, he decided to approach her through her friend. He befriended Arnold and honestly admitted that he had a crush on the girl. Arnold boiled over, but was hesitant to even tell him that he had loved her for years. Eventually, the three of them hung out until New Year's Eve and were very friendly. They had their own circle, their own company. 2 guys and a girl. Together they made fun of the others, got through tough days together and went to school events together, helping each other out with their studies. Arnold, it must be said, at some point put aside his jealousy and rejoiced that he finally had a friend. Despite the fact that he was a rich son, wore fancy clothes, he never had any friends. Eva was the only friend he had, and now he had a real friend. On New Year's Eve at school, however, Charlie and Eva danced together, and not just one dance. They were absorbed in each other. Arnold sat on the bench and watched them holding hands and laughing. Knowing that there could be no secrets in their threesome, Eva didn't tell Arnold that she was in love with Kostya. She was afraid he might tell him that. And Charlie stopped talking about her for the same reason. Arnold took this as a signal that Charlie was no longer a rival, but simply a friend. But in fact, they were slowly getting closer for fear of scaring each other off. On New Year's Eve, wore a red dress, let her hair down, and wore high-heeled shoes. Charlie wore a simple white shirt and jeans. Together they looked like a movie character, like the lead characters in a soap opera. Arnold watched them and wanted to cry because at some point they reached out and kissed each other. It was not in public, but in a secluded corner in the farthest corridor where there was little light. Only Arnold could see them because he was sitting there on the edge, away from everyone, both the dancers and the strict teachers who looked after the children. From that day on, Eva and Charlie became an official couple. They were teased, but only out of jealousy, and they really stood by each other. Eva began to walk home with Charlie, and Arnold stayed behind. "Come with us," she smiled at him. "I need to go home." Arnold lied. They never understood why he distanced himself from them. But closer to graduation night, Arnold made up his mind. He drank a bottle of his father's port and went to Eva's house. "You should have chosen me over him. I was the one who carried your briefcase for years. I was the one who comforted you when the gym teacher gave you a D and I slashed his tires afterwards. I was the one who loved you since the first grade, and for some reason I chose him." He was yelling, not thinking straight. Eva stood next to him and agonized. "How could I choose you if you didn't offer it to me? Arnold, you've never shown any feelings. You've never told me that in 9 years. How should I have known?" "You couldn't tell by the way I acted. Maybe you're right, but it's up to the boy to take the initiative." He came up to her and hugged her, and she didn't push him away. She just looked him in the eye. "You are very dear to me, but in a different way. Even if you had told me this today or a year ago." or when we were in first grade, you still wouldn't have come out. I'm sorry, it's not your fault. But it's not my fault I didn't love you either. It's nobody's fault. We don't choose who we fall in love with, do we? That's what the heart decides. Let's just be friends. Okay, I won't tell him. He cares about you too. You're his only friend. Arnold grew sober. He was ashamed and just walked away, leaving her question unanswered. Eva thought a lot about him that night. She was sorry that their love was hurting him. She thought Arnold would get used to it, that it was just friendly jealousy. But things got out of hand. Arnold stopped talking to them. He had changed. No one had heard from him all summer, and in the fall he came to school completely different. By then, Eva and Charlie had already built a strong relationship. They had introduced each other to their families. They had even spent a couple of nights together at Charlie's house under the pretense of studying together. Eva's father was strict. He wouldn't let Charlie stay with them until morning. And he always asked that Eva leave the door of her room 10 inches open for oversight. Charlie's mother, Inga, on the other hand, was more loyal. She could call Connor herself and ask her daughter to watch a movie together. Charlie and Eva even dreamed that their parents would get together too, but they were both working hard and weren't up to it. Arnold walked into the classroom on September 1, and the girls gasped. He smelled of expensive perfume. He wore fancy clothes and an even fancier haircut with elongated bangs. He walked past Eva without even looking at her. That was his plan. Arnold was having an affair now and then with one of his classmates. Eventually, the girls put up a fight for Arnold. He started taking his father's car for rides in the evenings, and the girls literally stood in line to go out with him. Charlie tried to have a relationship with him, but Arnold stuck his head up high and wouldn't even say hello to him. Eva became a persona for him, too. At the next New Year's Eve party, however, Arnold reminded her of himself. He arrived there drunk, and when he saw Eva without Charlie, he approached her. "Well, shall we dance?" he asked. "You've been drinking and what? I've changed for you, little mouse baby. I want you to be with me. Now I'm not just some chatterbox who carries your bag. I got girls following me around in droves. Anybody in the audience would be happy if I asked them to dance. Don't say no to a friend." Eva shrugged her shoulders. "It's just a dance." They hadn't spoken in a long time, and she hoped in her heart that Arnold would remain her friend, even though she was with Charlie. Besides, Charlie wasn't jealous. They trusted each other. When they began to dance, Charlie returned to the hall. He saw Eva with Arnold, winked at her, and began dancing with another girl whom no one had invited. She was considered a fool, and Charlie wanted to cheer her on. Over the music, you couldn't hear what Arnold was saying. "Let's go out the back door. There's a secluded spot. My car is parked there." "What do you say?" He smiled. "I'm with Charlie." Eva was perturbed by the suggestion and stopped. Charlie saw it and tensed up, but he didn't stop dancing. "Then I'll take what's owed me for my years of study right here and now," Arnold said, and he kissed her in front of everyone. Eva burst out waving her arms, but Arnold held her head firmly against his. "Hey, Charlie, look," someone shouted. Charlie turned and saw what Arnold was doing. He jumped at him with his fists and kicked him. He was already lying on the floor asking him to stop, but they didn't pull him away right away. He was furious, screaming that Eva was his girlfriend, and that Arnold should never go near her again. He didn't know how to fight, and he sobered up fast, lying on the school linoleum. When Charlie was finally dragged away, the teachers began to sort out what was wrong, and Arnold stood up and wiped the blood from his face with the sleeve of his expensive shirt. "You'll have to answer for this," Arnold growled angrily. "This is all because of you," said Eva to her classmate, who had a crush on Arnold. and before that, she'd been chasing Charlie. Eva was clearly a bit of a pain in the ass. The debriefing took place in the presence of her parents, and then no police were involved, but Diana, Arnold's mother, was very eager to report it. She felt this Eva would be nothing but trouble, and she hated the girl with all her soul. And then there was 11th grade, where Arnold showed himself even more vividly. His hatred for Charlie only grew stronger, and he began to set him up. At first, he did it surreptitiously, sending ridiculous messages to the teachers from his phone to make them angry at him. He'd give him DAs in his journal, which Charlie had to account for. He wasn't afraid of getting caught. He got into the excitement and enjoyed his revenge. Charlie didn't know what was going on and didn't dare point a finger without proof. But that soon wasn't enough. Then Arnold began to act openly. He made friends with the local athletes, took them for rides in his car to expensive restaurants in the evening. In return, they helped him bully Charlie. In PE, Charlie would always get hit in the face with a ball, bleeding and bruising. He was tripped up and mocked. Eva didn't care. She stood up for him and loved him, so the other girls didn't dare come near him. Arnold realized this tactic wasn't working, so one day he stopped his silly attacks. He walked up to Charlie completely sober and held out his hand to Charlie, not shaking it. It was at the disco, when it was only a short time before graduation. I was the one who wrote those messages to the teachers. And I was the one who gave the Fs that you didn't get. And I was the one who put glue on my chair, and a lot of other things. I'm sorry. It's just that I was in love with Eva. Arnold looked sadly into her eyes. Eva stood next to her and held her boyfriend's hand. And what had changed? Charlie asked. I realized that I had lost and I don't want to hurt her. And she loves you for some reason. God only knows why. So I throw out the white flag and give you my hand. I don't want any more animosity. We won't make friends, but I would like to maintain a friendly relationship with her. How possible is that? I've known her since she was a child. He was talking about Eva in the third person, though she was standing next to him as if asking permission. Charlie tensed. He didn't believe a word he was saying, but the fact that Arnold had come to confess and extend his hand was already a good call. Charlie was getting pretty fed up with it. I don't decide about friendship. She does. Charlie answered and held out his hand to Arnold. He held out his hand and shook it. Eva sighed calmly, but she was wary of Arnold. They might have exchanged a few words, smiled at each other, but nothing more. Arnold had instantly gained his trust and Charlie didn't like it. But now he had nothing to complain about. He felt in his gut that Arnold hadn't given up, that he was walking around like a jackal around a predator, waiting for the right moment to take his prey. In the meantime, the prey itself had decided to go to the same university that the jackal had intended. In fact, they had always planned to go there together. Charlie, on the other hand, decided to study in another part of town. He wasn't interested in teaching. He had always wanted to be an engineer. However, Arnold and Eva were getting closer. They went out to apply together. They rode in Arnold's expensive car together, and he would walk her home and call her. They got jokes together, and Charlie began to feel out of place. Jealousy prompted him to apply to the same school and become a physical education teacher. At the time, he didn't care what he did for a living. It was more important to have her around. That's how the three of them ended up at the pedagogical university. Arnold's parents wanted their son to become a businessman and continue their business. They didn't understand why their son had such a passion for teaching. Arnold's mother guessed that it was, as before, about the civilian Eva, but she couldn't say a word about her. Her son would lose his temper if anyone spoke ill of his beloved girl. Every time he met, he'd shake Charlene's hand, tell everyone that Eva was an old friend of his, and at home he'd say, "I'm going to marry her." Arnold's father liked this zeal, and he declared that if his son married a girl who had been with another man for several years, He would give him half of the family account on the same day. Arnold only shrugged his shoulders. He had never known the value of money, and he had always had it. He said it would be a nice addition to the wedding. He decided he would buy a country house with the money and raise horses. His father's factory was never part of his plans. Arnold is never part of his plans. Arnold did not like to work. And that was what frustrated his parents. School flew by unnoticed. To avert his eyes, Arnold got himself a girlfriend, and they went out in pairs. But time was running out and something had to be done. In his senior year, Arnold developed his own connections and friends. He traveled with his father to business meetings and got to know the city judge, the prosecutor, the mayor, and his sons by sight. He made the right acquaintances, knowing that one day he would need them, and the opportunity did not last long. It happened on graduation day. All three friends received well-deserved diplomas. Eva's diploma was read. She became a philologist. Arnold was a math teacher, and Charlie was a physical education teacher. All three of them joked that it would be good to work together, to go together for life. But Arnold's father still dragged him into the business, dissuading him from going to work as a teacher in a regular school. On the evening of their graduation ceremony, Arnold saw Eva and Charlie looking at each other, kissing, his girlfriend whispering to him that Charlie had proposed to Eva and that they would soon marry. When Arnold heard the news, he was completely blown away. He got drunk and drove around town. Charlie got a car too. He worked for 2 years to get his driver's license and get a car. Eventually, he had the white car all to himself and drove Eva home that night. They said goodbye, as usual, and kissed for a long time at the door, and then he drove away. In the morning, Eva was awakened by the doorbell ringing. Her father was no longer home. She opened the door and saw Arnold on the threshold. "You've already heard. This is a nightmare. I came to support you." He took her in his arms and stroked her head. "What? What happened? How come he didn't call you?" "So did his mother. My God, I'll be bad bringing bad news. What's going on?" Eve got nervous. "Charlie got arrested. He hit a man to death. It was a woman." Eva sat down on the bed. She was in unicorn pajamas and sleepily disheveled with hair, and was trying to comprehend what she had just heard. How could this have happened? She asked, "He had been drinking last night." "Well, a friend of mine called me. Said Charlie asked me to tell him he must have had too much to drink last night and hit her. Didn't even call an ambulance. A woman could have been saved. He left the scene of the accident. They say they found illegal drugs on him. I didn't see it coming." Eva clutched her head. It was like a nightmare from then on. Charlie was only allowed in by his mother. She was the one who broke the news. The trial had happened very quickly. Within a month, Charlie had been sentenced for manslaughter. He got 8 years in a minimum security prison. They found not only alcohol in his bloodstream, but also illegal substances. They found them in his home during the search. Eva was crying all the time. He didn't take anything. I didn't notice once. He was normal. Nothing in his behavior changed. He didn't drink much either. He'd have a beer in the evening, but nothing strong. How come? He wasn't the type to leave a man to die. Arnold was there to comfort her as best he could. It's at times like this that human nature reveals itself. I can't believe Charlie would do that either. But neither of us seems to really know each other. Here's some of the forbidden stuff they found on him, but they found it in his blood too. Apparently he got mixed up with someone and we didn't follow up. That was the kind of talk she heard every day. He managed to convince her that Charlie was guilty. Meanwhile, she wasn't even allowed to talk to him. Eva would sometimes visit Charlie's mother. They talked for hours. She was convinced of her son's innocence. She was offered a job in another city, where she and Charlie had come from years before. But she was hesitant to accept. After all, her son was here. She was the only one allowed to see him. For reasons known to God, Eva helped and made this difficult decision. Inga decided she would earn money for a good lawyer and come back to town in a year. It was better than sitting around doing nothing. Time passed. Days of the week. Eva kept pushing for a meeting with Charlie. So Arnold decided to cheat. Cut off all the loose ends. He falsified a funeral letter and said he'd been killed in prison. He said he was on his own all the time. He was in withdrawal. That's why he was throwing himself at everybody. Eva fell down without feeling when she saw the bulletin. That was it. She wanted to wait for him, but now there was no one to wait for him. She cried for a long time, and Arnold was by her side the whole time. They went together to the prison building, where the warden himself assured Eva that Charlie's body had been sent to his homeland, where his mother had gone the week before. Of course, Arnold had bribed the warden. He was well acquainted with his daughters, had managed to make useful acquaintances here as well. And to keep Eva from contacting Charlie's mother, he switched her phone number. When Eva called her to offer her condolences and to find out where to visit Charlie's grave, another acquaintance of Arnold's answered. She had studied theater. She said in her own voice that Charlie had been cremated and that she didn't want to know Eva anymore. She was the reason all this had happened. Eva believed it, and Arnold was there hearing every word. Her voice even sounded different, she said. She was having a fit of grief. She cried a lot. Plus, the connection is a different city. Don't cry. Come to me. So Arnold arranged for Charlie's death, which only the girl believed in. Of course, there was the possibility that Charlie's mother would come back and see Eve here, and she would find out. All he could do was blacklist her number so she couldn't call. For the rest, he had to rely on chance. The woman said she was going away for a year, so Arnold would have a whole year to make the fairy tale come true. He talked to the warden and asked him nicely about transferring Charlie to another prison closer to home, so that his mother would have no reason to return. And if he just got killed, it would be even better there. Arnold didn't ask that directly. Leaving the choice to his superior, he said so. And he felt no remorse. On the contrary, he was relieved. He had succeeded. The rival was no longer on his trail. 2 months after these events, Arnold decided to go on the offensive. He bought a ring and came to Eva's house in the evening. They agreed that they would watch a movie together. She habitually let him into the house, turned on the movie, and opened a packet of chips. They lay there and stared at the screen. Arnold wasn't sure if she would agree, and there was no way he was daring to propose to her. After all, he was only there as a friend. You know, it's going to show soon anyway. So I'll tell you. I'm expecting Charlie's baby, and he didn't even know it. I didn't tell anyone, not even my dad, Eva said, in the middle of the movie, The Crew. At that moment, the ground fell beneath his feet. His breath caught. He thought he'd won, but it turned out he'd been outplayed. Checkmate. Even if you marry her, you'll be raising Charlie's kid. It ran through his head like a red line. You weren't thinking, but not having a baby. Eva looked at him like he was an enemy of the people. You're out of your mind. I just thought you might do it, and I wanted to keep you from doing something so stupid. You don't think so? I didn't suggest that. Arnold backtracked. He needed her to trust him. Got it in his hand. Well, I don't care. We'll have 1 child with him, and we'll have 5 more of our own. It wouldn't be a problem. No one would know about it, Arnold thought. He looked Eva in the eyes, knelt down in front of her, and held out the ring. And here Arnold waited for the girl he had loved all his life to finally say yes and become his soulmate. Why do you need this? You have a Maya, Arnold smiled. First of all, Maya is cheating on me. I caught her. She said it was the first and last time. I promised to forgive her, but I can't. And secondly, I love you, and have always loved only you. Kissing her, I imagined you. And I would have lived that way, and I wouldn't have come between you for anything. But since it happened to Charlie, I can't do otherwise. I will love your child as my own. There's a part of you in him, and that's a lot. Mia, was she cheating on you? Arnold lied about it, of course. But it was so Eva wouldn't feel guilty about ending their relationship? That night she did not say yes, but only asked how he imagined a life together with her. If she loved another, let him be dead and carry his child. To make a decision, she decided to consult her father. He knew about the whole situation, but he didn't know that he was about to become a grandfather. I don't know, daughter. It's up to you to decide. Charlie doesn't look like the kind of man who did what he was put away for. I personally didn't believe he was guilty. The other thing is that he's gone, and you're young, and it's going to be hard for you to be alone with a baby. Of course, I will help in any way I can. Don't even think about it. We will help you in any case. But the baby needs a father. I don't know Arnold. I only know his mother, Diana. They're peculiar people, other people, not bad, not kind. I can't tell you about them. We haven't spoken in a long time. It's up to you, and I'll take whatever decision you make and support it. Eva sighed. And now you would ask your mother if she came back to live with her. Father smiled. Not anymore. There's a huge time gap between us now. It was her fault she missed you growing up. You missed her. And she wasn't there for you. And that was just her decision. So my feelings for her are gone. And nothing's gonna bring them back. I resent her for not being with you and me. She's a stranger to me now. Eva wondered if Charlie really was guilty of what he'd done, then he wouldn't be there for her either. He'd taken the illegal drugs himself, he'd drunk. Riven himself, he'd rioted in jail himself. Apparently the drugs had mixed with the alcohol, and he was no longer thinking straight. Eva realized that, like her father, she would never forgive him for not being there for her. She longed for him very much, and she was beginning to get angry. After all, he was the one to blame for everything that had happened. That night she accepted Arnold's proposal. They became a couple. Arnold proudly told his parents about it, gathering that they had been together for quite some time. His father and mother would not have allowed him to marry if they knew that Eva's child was not his. So he kept quiet about it and said they would soon be grandparents. Arnold's father began preparing paperwork to give his son half of his fortune from his bank account. One day he planned to give him his company as well, and now he dreamed that Eva had a boy. And a few weeks later, an ultrasound showed that it would be. They were expecting a son. Now Eva came home from the store. A friend helped her carry her shopping. Everything was ready for tomorrow. "Arnold, are you home?" asked Eva. She found her fiancé in the kitchen with a glass of wine. "Wine is good," she said thoughtfully. "Wine is not cognac. Tomorrow you have to be in shape." Arnold nodded and didn't even look at Eva. He'd been drinking a lot these days. That's the way it always is. You push a button and you get results. And then you get the feeling there's nothing left to strive for. When you get your goal, it stops being fun. Arnold got his prize. It's more than okay. Of course, he still treasured her. But the feeling that he might lose her was gone. Here she is, in his house, and from tomorrow, in his passport as well, and she's not going anywhere now. It's all settled. It remains to wait for the birth and to spend the first wedding night with her, which has been postponed for a long time because of the pregnancy. And the best is yet to come. But something made him sad today. He wanted her to love him as much as he loved her. But Eva still refused to even kiss him. Arnold, he thought it would pass, that it would have to wait. But patience was not his strong suit. He got the girl, but he didn't get her heart. The next evening came abruptly in the morning. Eva put on her dress. Her girlfriend, who was a beautician, gave her a stunning makeover. And then the best hairdresser in town arrived and gave her a magical haircut, which nevertheless pressed eerily on her head. Arnold's mother never once approached her, nor did she help or participate. She, too, never parted with a glass of wine or, at times, whiskey. Eva didn't care how she felt about her. She missed Charlie terribly and felt she was betraying his memory. Now the idea of marriage didn't seem so good to her. Besides, Arnold's father made her sign papers that she would not claim any wealth in the event of a divorce. This was unpleasant. She didn't want anything from them anyway. Arnold was furious, but Eva said it wasn't a problem. She signed every single piece of paper and never brought it up again. It was a formality, and they didn't have to trust her. Depression swept over her, and she never smiled once on her wedding day. She grieved for Charlie, too, all the time, remembering the last day she'd seen him. They had decided to get married then. But Eva didn't tell him she was pregnant. She wanted it to be a surprise. She didn't know for sure at the time. Her speculation and hunch that a 2-week delay was a logical reason to tickle her nerve. She imagined telling him how excited he would be. Charlie had given her her mother's ring, and Eva hadn't parted with it. On their last night, Charlie had kissed her for a long time, even offering to go away together somewhere and spend the night together, if she had said yes. But she wondered if she was expecting a baby. Eva smiled and said she was tired and needed to stay home. The test was already in the nightstand. She had planned to wait a little longer and retest. Now, remembering it, she poured tears into her eyes every time. Things might have been different if she had just stayed with him that night. And now she was in her wedding dress, and the guests gasped and said the brides always cry. Her father was in the same mood. He drank and wouldn't even look at Arnold's parents. But Diana did not take her loving eyes off him. Her husband knew that his wife had been in love with him for years, but he kept silent. After all, she was with him. He told his son, too. It didn't matter that she was looking the other way. What mattered was that she would fall asleep and wake up with you. He didn't realize that these words applied equally to him and Eva as they did to his parents. Toward evening, the bride drove the wedding cortege toward the registry office. She looked out the window and felt sick at heart. She wanted to run away, but she didn't. This morning, Arnold, seeing her in her dress, smiled happily. His whole life flashed through his mind: first grade, and her heavy backpack, in which he piled all her textbooks just in case. Their friendship, Charlie's appearance, the kiss he stole from her at the party, and their fight. He remembered everything as she walked toward him. Then he took her beautifully under his arm and went to the registry office, where a few minutes later they kissed for the first time. They were pronounced husband and wife. Next, everyone went to the restaurant. Arnold's mother, Diane, looked at Connor and got drunk that day. And her husband was getting drunk looking at the fact that his wife was ready to run away with someone else right now. Harry had accomplished everything in life for her. But how much do you feed the wolf? He still looks to the woods. Connor was her forest, and he realized it long ago, but there was nothing he could do about it. Harry loved his she-wolf. Arnold, in his joy, decided to get drunk too. They weren't going to have a wedding night tonight anyway. He celebrated his victory without even looking at the trophy. Where would she go from him now? Nowhere. Eva sat at the table. Waiters brought a dish, drinks made especially for her vitamin juices. Arnold made sure that his wife at the wedding was fed only what was healthy and not dangerous in her condition. Now the waiters brought her a dish that the eminent chef prepared just for her. There was no appetite. But Eva ate. She had to pretend that all was well. She saw that her father was drinking. He sensed his daughter was unhappy, and he wished his wife had been with him that day. Things could have turned out differently. The restaurant was fancy. All the guests were dressed in expensive clothes, and Eva felt uncomfortable, unused to such luxury. The waiters were all dressed to perfection. Everyone had a straight back and lacquered gloves. The music was from the same opera. Closer to the classics, a live orchestra played what Arnold's mother had announced. She did take part in their wedding as much as she could. She chose the restaurant, ordered flowers and music, but she didn't go anywhere near the bride, except to hug her son after the ceremony in the registry office. She saw a note on one of the trays that Eva was brought in. The bride opened it mechanically and saw only a few words there. She stood up from her seat, blinked, and lowered her eyes to the note again. It didn't show. How well she knew that handwriting, and she remembered how she and Charlie had taken French classes for a year, dreaming of one day going to Paris and seeing the Eiffel Tower. They decided then that if you have a dream, you have to do everything to fulfill it. They even started saving money and started learning French, trying to speak it to each other. And this note was written in his hand. It was definitely from him. Arnold simply would not have had the intelligence to do such a thing. Eva found her husband with her eyes. He was staggering, moving toward the exit, overdrawn. "Where are you?" shouted Eva, looking around. No one answered. Everything swirled around. Everything merged into one. Music, noise, voices, dancing guests. "Where are you?" she shouted even louder. Immediately her father flew up to her. "What are you doing?" Arnold came out. "Sit down. I'll get him now," he said. While her father went away, Eva kept looking around. There was no one around. She got up and went outside. No one. Only Arnold asked. What did she want? Nothing, Eva answered and left. She went out the back door. It was open too. Guests were everywhere. The restaurant had been rented for the day, and there was a little boy about 7 years old standing at the fence. "A token," he said. Eva walked up to him. "It was you who passed the note." "Where did you get it from?" she asked. The boy was poorly dressed. He was wearing only a light sweater. He was swarthy with a curly head. "From Charlie." "Charlie is alive." Eva thought she was going to faint with happiness. The child nodded. "Where is he? How is that even possible?" Listen carefully, with a look like he was already in his 40s. "Charlie escaped from prison. It wasn't his fault. Your fiancé set him up. He was ordered to be killed in prison, so Charlie escaped. He was shot and wounded. He needs to go to the hospital. He's been in my barn for 2 days. I've been carrying bandages for him, helping to dress his wound. But he's still not feeling well. He lost a lot of blood. He found out about the wedding and ran away." Except that Eva didn't quite get a good look at this kid, and she wanted to run away with him right now. "I have to go away. Where's your house?" "Don't panio. You can't kick up dust. Come at dawn in the morning, so your husband won't see you. He's a dangerous man. He's the one who hit that woman Charlie got locked up for. I live on the outskirts of town. There's a private house at Green Gate. Wait a minute. What a minute? What if your parents see Charlie hiding in the barn?" "They won't. Don't worry. I live with my stepfather. No mom, no dad. He doesn't like me. He wants to put me in a foster home next month, so he won't go looking for me. How are you going to get there?" "I'll be fine. Just make sure you come and bring some antibiotics. He's not well." The boy ran away. Eva returned to her guests. Arnold was already asleep with his face in salad. A smile touched her lips for the first time. "He's alive. Alive. How had all this happened? What about his mother? She knows he's alive." Eva found her real number in her phone and only now saw that it was blacklisted. That's what Vladik had been lying to her all along. He put him away for his crime, decided to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So it wasn't his mother who had spoken to her then. She didn't think she sounded like that for nothing. She couldn't have told her that. and the detention was bogus, and the warden was bribed. Her head was spinning. Charlie's alive, and she's here in a dress. He needs help, and she's powerless. These thoughts gave Eva a headache. She even thought she might give birth prematurely. She had been through so much. Eva went home saying she felt unwell. She hardly slept that night. In the morning, she got into her car and drove to the outskirts of the city in the private sector where the boy had told her to go. It wasn't for nothing that Arnold had insisted she get her license and gave her a small car. She stopped the car in the distance and walked. The boy met her, took her by the hand, and led her across the backyard so no one would see. He opened the barn door and Eva saw Charlie. He was in a sweat. Apparently, Charlie's temperature had risen because of the wound. Eva rushed to him. "Eva," he said to her. And he kissed her. They hugged and couldn't get enough of each other. He said, "You hit a man and they found illegal drugs on you, and that you were killed. He got someone to rude me in your mother's name, so I'd be sure to believe it all. I married him." Eva was crying, holding her huge belly with her hand. "It's okay. It's okay. You're having a baby?" He smiled. Charlie put his hand to his stomach and smiled happily. He didn't care if it was another man's child. All that mattered was that she was there for him. He knew they were getting married and understood that Arnold had set it all up. "You're going to have a son. It's your baby. I'm 7 months pregnant now, really." Charlie laughed and immediately grimaced in pain. "I work early." "The bullet went through?" Eva asked. Charlie nodded. Eva could see the hole in his shoulder on both sides. The wound was in bad shape. It was the left side. There was a heart next to it. "You need to go to the hospital," she said. "You can't. You know, Arnold came to see me that night. He offered me a drink. I didn't want one, so I poured the tea. So he slipped me the stuff and put it in the house. I passed out right in the middle of the conversation. Apparently there were sleeping pills in there too. I don't know what kind of shit he slipped me. But when I woke up, the police were in the house. You believe me, don't you?" "Of course I do. I don't know how I could doubt you. Arnold set it up like that." Eva treated the wound as best she could. Her head was dizzy with blood, but she knew his life was at stake. Charlie was writhing in pain. He was comforted by the boy who had sheltered him. "You are a brave boy," said Eva, "and you are a silly girl." "And you are a silly girl. Why did you marry someone else?" Eva felt wildly ashamed. She had really betrayed him. How could she believe Arnold? He deceived me. And when I found out you were dead, I just lost the meaning of life. I decided that with Arnold, it would be easier for me to raise our child. He wanted so much to be there for me, and I didn't care. It didn't matter. It doesn't matter. We just need to keep it a secret. I'm a fugitive now. They'll be looking for me, and they'll come to you. So you have to be careful. I'm not angry, I understand. Arnold set it up that way. It wasn't your fault. You did the right thing. If I was really dead, I wouldn't want you to be alone. Say no more. So I'm not ready to lose you ever. Eva gave him the phone with her old SIM card. This is for you to call from here. I'll buy a second phone and another SIM card today. If you need anything, call me. I'll see if I can find evidence of Arnold's guilt in his office. He hides everything important in the safe, but I know the password to it. I found it on the computer by accident. Eva left him a bag of food and pills. She brought a huge piece of wedding cake. They kissed goodbye, and Eva went home. Anger grew in her at Arnold, and she was afraid of giving herself away. She had to find out the truth at all costs. "Where have you been?" There was a noise behind her back. As soon as Eva entered, she flinched. It was Arnold. She felt as if she'd been caught in the act. And in fact, she had been. Arnold seemed different to her now. She saw before her a cold-blooded killer of a man who had broken many people's lives. He frightened her and made her want to run away from him. "I was at the doctor's," she said with a nonchalant look. "Yesterday's wedding made me nervous. There were so many people. I'm not used to it." Arnold stepped closer from the hall, looked into her eyes. "You're lying. I'm tracking your phone through a special app. There's a feature, didn't you know? You're pregnant. There's no telling what could happen. I need to know where you are. And you weren't at the doctor today. You were on the outskirts of town. What were you doing there?" Eva went pale. "You know, I'm shocked that you're following me. I was at the doctor's. Only it's not the kind of doctor you're used to seeing. I was at my grandmother's. She talked me into having an easy birth. You know I'm nervous. The doctor said they might have to do a C-section." She lifted her chin and looked him in the eye with challenge. The fear passed and rage came. She remembered what he had done to Charlie with their lives and wanted to punch him as hard as she could. Arnold sighed, nodding and hugging her. He believed. "I'm sorry, I just got nervous. You've really got a long deadline." Eva exhaled and hugged him. "Just promise me you won't do it again. I have to go see that healer again, by the way." "Let's go together." Eva smiled. Arnold must have known that Charlie had escaped, and she wanted to draw suspicion away from that place. She needed Arnold to believe that she hadn't met him, but was at the healer's. "We'll see. Let me take you to a normal hospital and have you checked out in a couple of hours, okay? I don't like all these quacks. They're all liars. And the only people who can give birth easily are doctors. You'll have your baby in the best hospital. Don't you have anything to worry about? I won't let anything happen to you or the baby." Eva nodded. Arnold kissed her on the cheek and was about to leave the room. But he heard behind her voice, "Arnold, what?" He turned around. "Turn off the stakeout. I'm not your thing. I'm just your wife. I don't like it. You can ride everywhere with me if you want, but don't follow me. I feel like a fish in a fishbowl." Arnold guiltily nodded and left. Eva sank down on the bed and felt the baby kick her. "Why are you kicking? We're going to be fine. Your daddy will be there for you now. I promise I'll do everything for it. You'll be the most loved, happiest baby in the world, and we'll be fine. Just don't bring so much to your mom. Still need to help your daddy. You and I will do that today. We have to take it easy. I need your help. I need you to be obedient today. I'm going to be obedient today. I'm going to be nervous, but don't worry. You're going to be fine." She stroked her belly and talked to him, and she was almost certain that the baby not only heard her but understood. Arnold's parents were at work. He himself was away too. Eva put the phone in the bedroom just in case and went to her spouse's office. She carefully removed it and typed the combination she had spied on the computer. She remembered it well because it was her date of birth, plus the number 9. It was Arnold's month of birth, and the number he was born on September 9. Apparently that number mattered to him. The combination worked and the safe opened. Inside was a lot of papers and miscellaneous items. Everything was in strict order. A video recorder was lying in a bag further away. Eva reached for it and smiled. "That's what I was looking for." She turned it on and saw everything there with her own eyes. Arnold filmed it the night he hit the woman. The recorder recorded it. It also recorded Arnold driving up to Charlie's house, smashing the bumper of his car and a wad of blood. All the evidence was in her hands. She closed the safe, hung the picture up, and hurried downstairs. The drive to the police station turned out to be an eternity too, but first Eva stopped at a photo salon and paid extra for the urgency. They made her 3 more copies of the dashcam video. Then she went to the station. She went in there, called the investigator and showed him the video. I know this family has long arms, so I backed up and sent the video to a few other places. That's just in case the video gets lost on you, Eva said. The investigator smiled. Yes, I'm only glad. I'll be right on the tail of that punk of yours. I knew the woman he hit. Believe me, he'll go to jail. The investigator promised he'd have Arnold in custody soon. Eva walked out of there, stopped at the drugstore, bought some medicine, and went to Charlie's. On the way, she threw away her phone. Enough was enough. No more stalking. She drove up to the house and saw that Arnold's car was parked exactly where she'd left it yesterday. Her heart pounded in another rhythm. He's here. He'll kill. He'll finish what they didn't finish in prison on his orders. She ran to the barn. Only Charlie was inside. Arnold here, Charlie rose to his feet. It was hard for him. At that moment, Arnold himself appeared behind Eve. Honey, get away from the criminal, he said. He had a pistol in his hand. Eva covered herself with it and looked menacingly at Arnold. Don't you dare, she said. Charlie gently pushed her aside. You can't take any chances. Go away. We'll deal with him, Charlie smiled. Eva cried. She was so afraid for him and she couldn't lose him again. I will die without him. You hear, I will die without him. Screamed. For all the strength she had, Arnold was thrown off balance by her words. But the way was open. Eva was out of the way, and he could pull the trigger. Arnold took the gun off the safety and took aim. At that moment he received a deafening blow to the head and fell. It was the boy who came to the barn from some huge iron. You can't do anything without me, he shook his head. Charlie rushed over to Arnold, took his gun and checked his pulse. You're a real piece of work, buddy, Charlie laughed. Call the police, Eva said. I found the recorder. We have proof. Now he can't get away with it. Charlie tied Arnold's hands with a rope. They left him in the barn and went out into the yard. They called the police and waited. They hugged each other, and the boy stood beside them. Dexter, that was the boy's name. What would you say if we took you in? He asked. I would say that you would do the right thing. You can't do it without me, can you? You were almost shot just now. The boy shook his head. Charlie stroked his hair. As soon as they let me out, I'll come and get you, he promised. In the meantime, I need to talk to your stepfather about your adoption. Okay. Yes, I will. The boy was happy and hugged Eva. Soon the police arrived. Arnold was handcuffed and put in the car. He needed medical attention, Eva said. The investigator nodded and gave orders to take him straight to the infirmary. Arnold woke up. They handcuffed him too and put him in the car. Eva was anxious. What if they were all bought and her efforts wouldn't help anyway? But they didn't have enough money or connections to bribe every last one of them. Apparently there were still some honest cops left. Arnold and Charlie were sitting next to each other as they drove. What's the matter? Did you get it? Now you're going to jail for your crimes, Charlie said. Will you be with the woman I love? You know, you take care of her. I will, and from you first of all. They drove on in silence. Charlie was taken to the hospital. They gave him some real medical attention and he got better right away. Being treated in a cold barn with whatever was handy only made things worse. The doctor said that a little more would have caused blood poisoning. The wound would now take much longer to stitch up. Eva returned to Arnold's house late that night after giving her statement. She told the investigator everything she knew and what Charlie had told her. In the evening, they let her go home. But she had no plans to stay at their house. What had happened? Arnold's parents were in the hallway. Eva told them the whole story, but briefly, because she was tired of telling them already today. Diane grabbed her heart, and Harry promised that he wouldn't interfere with the investigator's work. He said he didn't expect to raise a murderer, a criminal, a scoundrel. Wait, what about the baby? That's our grandson. Can't you just take the baby for yourself? Diane became indignant. Eva smiled. That's my baby. How's that? I can't have him. That's my grandson. I'll sue him from you, she said. It's a good thing he's not Arnold's. Good luck. Eva packed her things and left for her father's house, where she had to retell the whole story again. And then again, when she called Charlie's mother, she went away to work. She had been so anxious to save up money for a good lawyer and get her son's case reviewed. And now she didn't need to be away from him anymore. And she promised to return soon. 2 months passed. Charlie's house was warm and happy again. Eva had given birth to a son. Charlie himself was helping his mother billet. Today they were expecting Eva's father to visit. The intrigue was that a month ago Connor had registered on a dating site and had corresponded with Charlie's mother for a long time. He didn't know she was his mother. She had no idea that Connor was Eva's father. On that site, all the dating was blind. No one wrote their names. Everyone was afraid of being judged. It was a small town. Eventually, they began to like each other and arranged to meet. Connor and Inga had seen each other several times and already knew each other since their children had been dating for years. When they saw each other at the appointed time, at the appointed place, they were both terribly embarrassed. Wow, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were here. Connor was confused. He was well into his 40s, but he hadn't lost his charm, and the years had only made him more handsome. Inga, on the other hand, was average, not a beauty, but she took care of herself. They walked around all evening and eventually decided not to see each other again. Eva had just had a baby. Charlie was finally acquitted and released from prison. He had been well compensated, and now they were getting ready to meet him at their place. Charlie made fun of his mother. She was visibly nervous, trying on different outfits, twisting in front of the mirror. She had a feminine figure, breathless, but not pudgy either. Her long, curly hair was always in a ponytail. Don't be nervous, Daddy won't care what you look like. He'll be so worried that he won't even remember what you were wearing. Even if you meet him with no clothes at all, Eva said, smiling. But you'll say the same to him without any clothes on. Without clothes on, he'd probably remember. They laughed. Eva and her future mother-in-law had a wonderful relationship. As soon as the divorce from Arnold was finalized, Eva and Charlie filed for the registry office. The wedding was planned in a week's time. Eva didn't want any more lavish celebrations. She said she wouldn't wear a dress either. They would go to the registry office in simple t-shirts and jeans and sign. They already had a family, and the wedding was just a formality. The evening went well, and Eva noticed that Igor clearly liked Inga. You even have names that sound alike. Charlie and Eva, Inga and Connor, Dexter noticed. He was adopted right away. Eva came to pick him up the same day with his father. The boy's stepfather didn't mind. He obviously didn't care for him. He grew up so independent that from the age of 4 he was able to do everything for himself. Laundry, and he fired up the stove, and he could cook. True, only eggs and pasta. But even that was just great for a child. Eva's father, learning about everything, wanted to find Arnold and beat him in the face for everything he had done. Luckily, Eva talked him out of it, and it was too late. He went straight to jail. The trial had only recently taken place. Arnold got the same sentence for what he'd done as Charlie. The prosecutor gave him a year for meanness and for threatening to kill Charlie in the barn, for putting an innocent man in jail because of him. Obstruction of justice was also a crime. It ended up being 9 years. His father, though he promised not to interfere, immediately appealed. So the trial was still going on, but we were still talking about years in prison, not months or weeks. Arnold got his due and would answer for everything he had done under the law. Dexter, having moved into his new home, quickly settled in. He was her adopted son on paper, but in reality he was like a younger brother, quick-witted and with a sense of humor. After another year, Inga and Connor got together and started living together. Upon learning of this in the lonely, swanky house, Diana opened another bottle of wine. Now she had finally lost hope that Connor would ever look in her direction. Her son was in jail. Her husband was perpetually angry and perpetually busy. Arnold, on the other hand, was not upset. He met one of the nurses in prison and had an affair. He was still in jail for a few years, and how this would end was still unclear. Charlie and Eva were expecting their second child and were happy.